Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Uh, Today we will continue with the series of the REST APIs where we are seeing the use case of the REST APIs, how we can use the REST APIs related to the Commvault along with the other programming language to automate the task. Okay, so in the last video, if you remember, we have talked about how we can initiate the DR backup using the Commvault APIs request that we have generated. Now today what we are going to do is we will try to take a backup of a sub-client for a file system based client. We'll see how to form that particular REST API URL and how to execute that. Now in that one, the first thing that we are trying to see is we are trying to get the information of a sub client. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to get the information of a sub client. Okay, like how you can get the information. I would not say just sub client, like how you can get the information for any specific client. If you require any information about any of the client, then how you can get that information. And when I say information, it's just the general information, like what are the sub client associated. Now there is something called sub client ID, how you can get the sub client ID, which you will require to use it in various REST API command that you will try to use it. Now for this, what you're going to do is we'll go to the REST API space, the core APIs, we'll go to the core API page. Under the files, under the under the files, you can see there is an option coming up with the name get subclient. When you click on this get subclient, this is going to show you the information about how to get the information about any of the subclient. So in there you can see that we required few information. So over here, so this is the URL that you will see that should be used for the making this REST API request, and then it will require some input to be given. Like if you want to get the information about the subclient associated with some specific client, you have to put that client ID over here, not the client name, the client ID. Okay, and then if you want the information for the specific backup set, that also you can define the backup set ID, the specific backup set ID under that particular client ID. Now the question comes up how to get this particular client ID or the backup set ID. That also you can get it with the help of the get file server details. But guys, you can even run this command before we can go to there. Let me tell you that you can run this particular REST API command instead of using the client ID. You can run it using the client name as well. But before I show you that, like how to generate the URL for getting the information of a client on the basis of the name, just look at this particular URL first. So this is the basic URL if you want to get the information about any of the sub client associated with any server. This is the URL that need to be used. Okay, but this URL is not complete. So in this particular URL, what you need to do is, let's say if you want to define the client ID, let's say there is some client with a client ID 12, then in that case, if you put that over here, the client ID is 12, now you will see this particular URL getting modified with the subclient question mark client ID is equals to 12, means you are trying to get the information for all the subclient associated with the client ID 12. But instead of client ID, if I want to put the client name, because that will be a very simple for me, getting the client ID using this particular REST API, I can get it. But then again, it will be a very hectic task to get the client ID and then get the subclient ID and all that. So if you want to get the information about any subclient associated with a client on the basis of name, that can also be done. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the Commvault documentation, REST APIs. Under the REST API, there is a tab available with the name get subclient, like which is going to tell you the information about how to get the information about the subclient. Over here, there are two URL that is being given on the basis of the ID and on the basis of the name. So you can see that it's almost similar. You have to put subclient question mark and then client ID is equal to, you have to put the client ID over here. Okay, but you can even get the information about the associated subclient on the basis of the client name. But instead of client ID, you have to type client name. That is very much possible. Okay, so guys, that's the reason why I said even in the last video that always refer to the documentation for more information, where you can get the more in-depth information about each and every of these particular URLs. Okay, this is good to get the high level overview, but yes, if you want the in-depth understanding, you're facing some problem, then you can always fall back to the documentation. Okay, now I know that I can put the client name as well to get the information. So if I go back to my code over here, you can see that what I have done is in the subclient question mark, instead of client ID, I have said client name. I want to get the information for this particular client. There's a client exists with this particular name. Now, when I executed this one, okay, let me generate a new token. Might be that has been expired, but that's okay. So when you execute this particular entire rest of the things are exactly same what we have discussed. We have just given the get command to get the information, like we are just trying to get execute this get for this URL. Okay, and then you can see that the exact same thing whatever we have defined in the last dr1. Now if I execute this particular block, it will return me the information like this one. You can see that it is giving me the information for this particular client. Okay, you can see that console, and there is a client ID 2 for this one. You can see that. Now there is a subclient ID 6 for the subclient name test. There is a subclient with the name test which has the subclient ID S6. Okay, so this subclient ID 6 will be unique for the entire environment. It's not like it's the another subclient can have the same subclient ID S6. No, it will be unique for the entire environment. So now you can use this subclient ID 6 to execute the specific command on this subclient name test. Guys, if I go back to my URL in there, I have the client available with the name Commvault, which has a subclient name created with the name test in there. Okay, it's a little slow in the lab, but I will just try to show you meanwhile. Okay, we'll come back to there to show you that information. But yes, this is how the information will be shown to you when you try to execute this particular command. Okay, now let's wait. Token is still getting generated. Okay, so not wait, what we can do is now what we will do is we'll try to form a URL, or I would say the command for executing the REST APIs for initiating the backup for this subclient ID 6 or this subclient test. Okay, so for this, if I take you back to the documentation, guys, there you have an option available in the core APIs with the name backup subclient, and now this will tell you that how you can execute the backup for any of the subclient. So you can see that this is a URL available. So there is a subclient ID that you need to put it up in this particular URL, and there will be an action taken, that is backup. Okay, there will be a backup that will be executed for that particular subclient ID. Okay, now there are the few parameters that you can put along. Okay, so you have to put, of course, the subclient ID. So if I put the subclient ID, you can see that command getting modified. So you can see that subclient ID has been replaced with the ID number, that 6 that I have placed over there. So guys, remember that it is just when you put in the request, when you put any of the parameters, your command get modified as per the parameter that you put it up over here. So you can get the entire generated command already ready. Now what type of backup you want to initiate? Incremental, full, synthetic, full, that you can select. So if you select full, now you can see that it is the backup, the action will be the backup, but the backup level that will be executed will be a full. But if you don't put anything, the default value for this one is incremental. You can see that default value is incremental. If you don't put anything in there, it is going to execute the incremental backup. Now let's say if you have selected synthetic full backup. So for the synthetic full backup, do you want to execute the incremental backup along with the synthetic full backup? So this run incremental is for that. If yes, you want to execute the incremental backup along with the synthetic full, you can say true. And if you say true, then do you want to run the incremental backup before synthetic full or after synthetic full? That also you can define over here. Okay, now notice one thing, as per whatever you select, the command will just keep on getting modified in there. Okay, so entire URL keep on getting updated over here as per your selection. Now over here, again, the selection in the URL, I have defined the subclient ID. What if I want to execute? What if I want to execute on the basis of the subclient name? Is it possible? Yes. So for that, we'll again go to the detailed documentation page. So in there, if you will see post subclient, this is the command which will execute your backup for any of the no, not this one, sorry. So there will be a command available to execute the backup. This one, sorry. This operation runs a backup job for a subclient. Now, over here, as I said, either you can run it on the basis of the ID, the subclient ID, or you can run it on the basis of the name. But if it is on the basis of the name, then you have to put it out subclient slash by name, and then you have to define all the parameter. Client name, you have to define the client name. You have to define the app name, like the app name is file system, and then you have to define the backup set name. You like default backup set, then you have to define the subclient name, in our case is a test, and then you have to put the other information. So the name one is a little complex if you put it up in there, but then it is easy to manage because we'll remember everything like straightforward. Putting up the ID, you have to get the IDs first, and then you can put that information, right? So now in this way, I have just created the URL on the basis of the client name. You can see that the entire URL is being created. Okay, so you can see that, and now I have just put it up. I've just copied this one. Remember that I have again copied this one from this tab only, this import, this particular one from the core API. Rest of the part I have just kept same. It just I have just modified the URL. Now if I execute this one, okay, so if I say execute, this is going to initiate a backup job in the Commvault environment. So guys, just to show you that I have a client with the name Commvault created in there, and that particular Commvault client has a subclient created with the name test, and this is what I have tried to put it up there. There's a client with the name Commvault for the file system, default backup set, and the subclient name is test. So instead of running it using the subclient ID, I have just tried to trigger it using the subclient name. Okay, so you will see it's still executing that. The lab environment is a little slow. That's the reason why it is taking this much of time. Otherwise, it would have already initiated that. Okay, so once you see the job ID and everything getting printed over there, then you can validate the same information over here in the job. So we'll just give it some time and we'll see what output it throws. Okay, so guys, it took some time, but now you can see that the execution of this command is being completed and it has initiated a job with a job ID 1034. So to validate it quickly, we just go to the command center, go to the active job section, and you can see that there is a job ID 1034 that is being executed. Okay, so guys, this is how you can actually run any backup job for any of the subclient using the REST APIs.